All right. Welcome on in to another action-packed edition of the Between the Hash Marks podcast. As always, I'm Matt Lombardo, joined by my friend, my colleague, my mentor, and the purveyor of the must-read, mandatory reading each Monday, the Two Deep Zone, Monday through Friday for that matter, Mike Tanya. Mike, how's it going, my friend?
I'm freezing.
Yeah,
I'm free.
it's like 4 degrees outside.
Yeah, it's like 4 degrees Fahrenheit, or it's about 20 right now, close to noon on Tuesday. I walked my dog. He gets to the end of the corner. He does his business. He looks at me like, "Can we get an Uber back?" That's how cold it was.
Yeah, I drove my daughter to the bus stop this morning because neither one of us were walking in that. And I think that by the time I got back into the car from the stop to the car, I had icicles forming off of my face.
How do you think she feels? Was she waiting on the bus, or was it right there?
We were in the car. We sat in the car
Got
in
in the car until the
kept it
bus.
nice and
Okay,
warm.
okay. Like, yeah, man, I'm freezing. I'm freezing, little one. So if you goodbye, go stand on the ice for a couple of hours and wait for that bus. Maybe it won't come. No, I'm glad you waited, dropped her off, got back. Beautiful, beautiful.
Absolutely. And of course, we have a lot to get into a podcast announcement later on in the podcast, which
Ooh.
you might have read on either one of our Substacks in the last couple of days. But if you haven't subscribed already to the Two Deep Zone, go ahead and subscribe on Substack. If you haven't subscribed to Between the Hash Marks on Substack, check out my work there. And as always, if you're a fan of this show, if you like the podcast, if you enjoy the analysis and the other things, subscribe on the Apple Podcast Store, Spotify. Check out my YouTube channel at Matt Lombardo 975. But subscribe to the Between the Hash Marks podcast and leave us those 5-star ratings and reviews. They really do help grow the show. They make it easier to find us. They boost us up in the rankings on the various podcast platforms. And it generally helps make the show possible in a lot of ways.
Absolutely. Do all those things. It's an attention economy, people. We crave your attention and we try our best to turn it into money. So help us out.
And certainly, four teams are where all of the attention lies going into this weekend. Championship weekend, Eagles, Commanders, an NFC East showdown, and what seems to be a conference championship or divisional game since time immemorial, the Kansas City Chiefs and the Buffalo Bills in the AFC. And, you know, Mike, I wrote last week going into Eagles Rams that the most important player on the field for both teams was Saquon Barkley. And that proved to be true. And going into this weekend, it certainly feels like the most important player, at least to the Eagles' chances of advancing to the Super Bowl, was once again, say it with me, Saquon Barkley.
Saquon Barkley. It's almost trite to point out at this point, but the Eagles were facing a Rams team that had an okay run defense, but seemed to have a Saquon problem. The Commanders have a bad run defense, and they also have a Saquon problem. At least they had in the two meetings in the regular season.
Yeah, it's bizarre. When you look at the two games, if you check out Saquon Barkley's game log, he had a nearly identical performance in both games. 150 rushing yards and 2 touchdowns in the Eagles win in Philadelphia on Thursday night, and 146 rushing yards and 2 touchdowns in the Eagles loss in week 16. Big difference here, though, Mike, and I'm writing about this on Between the Hash Marks, that should drop this week, in terms of one key for each team advancing. In the Eagles win, he had 3 catches for 52 yards, including 2 for first downs. No catches whatsoever in that game that the Eagles lost when Jalen Hurts got hurt. It almost feels to me going into this game that Nick Sirianni, Kellen Moore, and the Eagles need to make a concerted effort to get Barkley involved, even more involved in the passing game than they have.
And in fact, in the Commanders' loss, I believe he dropped, or maybe drop isn't the right word. There was a wheel route to him that he and Kenny Pickett couldn't connect. That might have been a difference maker in that game. Of course, Kenny Pickett was a difference maker in that game. And
for all the wrong reasons for Philadelphia.
For all the wrong reasons. And then if you look at Barkley in this last game, you know, it's the Eagles' offense. Backs are not going to catch 14 passes in this, but Barkley had an early opening drive. He had a catch over the middle that just helped move the chains. Later on, I believe it was a 3rd and 12, 3rd and 13, deep in Eagles territory. He catches one of those swing pass with the blocker plays. I forget what they're called. Very popular in the NFL right now. 3rd and long, catches a swing pass, had Calcitretta or Goddard or somebody in front of him, gained 14, 15 yards. Again, got them out of a deep hole. I think they converted a field goal on that drive, or maybe they just ate clock. But that's an element of the Eagles passing game that they need. You know, Nick Sirianni just gave his press conference and he's like, yeah, I'm not that worried about the passing game. And And I don't think you should be worried about the passing game. I feel like it's a weird thing. Like Eagles fans for the last 11 years run the damn ball. The Eagles run the damn ball, and they're like, "What's up with our passing stats?" Um, but but they need a consistent counterpunch to Brown and Smitty, and it can't just be Goddard. And they need that check down option, that short option that gets easy yak, and that should be Barkley.
And I think it's even more important now when you look at Jalen Hurts getting banged up in that game last week. We're going to touch on that and go in depth on that later in the podcast. But
Right.
you saw last week against the Rams when Jalen Hurts was a little bit banged up with the knee. All of a sudden, that creates a question mark about how often are you going to be able to push the ball vertically downfield to an A.J. Brown, to
Right.
a Devonta Smith, when the reality is this offense needs to keep the chains moving, as you alluded to. And Saquon Barkley during the regular season had a 44% success rate as a receiver. And that's when you convert at least 40% of the yards for a first down. 44%, second best in his career. It's one of the best ratings of running backs across the entire league. Barkley's bailed them out against the Packers in Brazil in the opener. A couple of big catches there against the Rams. The play you alluded to, the third and forever from the shadow of the goalpost that they converted to keep that drive moving. More than ever, I think getting Barkley in space, creating mismatches against the Commanders' secondary, that's going to do a lot to alleviate some of the pressure off of Jalen Hurts. And maybe at that point, Washington isn't going to be able to pin their ears back and blitz Jalen, who might be banged up as often as they might like to.
And Gainwell can also catch swing passes. It seems like that's a forgotten element. He had a couple of big short catches that turn into productive gains, in part because teams are perennially shocked when Hurts throws the ball short into the flats or over the middle of the field. And, Hurts being hurt doesn't just, impact his ability to scramble, get the ball deep. It impacts his ability to be a threat as a designed rusher, which helps open Barkley up. And one of the things we saw in the Commanders game, a lot of Barkley's value in that game was a couple of big runs, not surprising. He couldn't churn it out as easily because he got stuffed a few times because there was no fear of Pickett running the ball. So how do you protect that? How do you create more options for your offense? Again, short pass opportunities, quick opportunities, get the ball to the backs, get the ball to Goddard a little bit more. Roll out once in a while. They rolled out one or two times. I think they rolled out twice a game in the last couple of weeks, and like each time it was a completion to Goddard, and they get a touchdown on one of them, etc. Get more of that stuff into the offense so that Hurts is comfortable doing more than sort of playing his kind of version of Josh Allen hero ball.
And it's amazing when you look at the Eagles offense when it's at its best compared to, say, the Ravens offense when they were at their best in the playoff win over the Steelers a couple weeks ago. A lot of similarities. And you saw it last week on that Eagles opening possession where the designed run on the Jalen Hurts touchdown run, there was so much misdirection up front with the offensive line. A beautifully designed play by Kellen Moore with the fake handoff to Saquon Barkley. They really create an incredible decoy for one another in the running game. And even if Hurts isn't 100%, if you can sell that it's going to be a scramble, but you're actually going to wind up pitching it out to Barkley the other way, it would be a formidable thing to have to try to defend.
You want as many of those things in your arsenal. And so often in this year, especially, the Eagles have not had the easiest stuff in the arsenal. The quick swing pass, the little screen, the little boot rollout to the tight end. Those are the simple things. Those are the things that all the teams run. The Eagles are very reluctant to do them. I know they're in the playbook because I've seen them. And let's balance things out a little bit more on offense because the defense is going to have its hands full against the Commanders.
They really are. And we're going to get into this game in depth later on in the podcast. We're going to get into some of the most important players in the AFC Conference Championship game, and a game that I really can't wait to see. It's like the AFC is producing these must-see matchups on that side of the bracket every week during these playoffs. It's been a lot of fun to watch. But we're also going to hop on the coaching carousel for a minute here, especially talking about offenses and talking about what's in the arsenal and in the playbook and in the bag of tricks. I have some pretty strong thoughts on the Chicago Bears hiring Ben Johnson, but I want to get your thoughts, Mike, on that particular hire, what it means for the Bears, what strikes you about Johnson as a candidate this time around taking this job. I have strong thoughts, but I'd love to hear how you think this is going to play out in the Windy City.
It's funny because I don't have strong thoughts about this. I don't. It's like, yeah, Ben Johnson has been the top candidate for 2 cycles. And the Bears have a rookie quarterback who played pretty well at an opening and have some talent elsewhere. And they're not run by cuckoo banana pants people. So Johnson joined them. So that's it. That's the end of the story. And now he's going to do what the top candidate does with the team that has like the best prospects, let's say, along the way. He's starting to assemble a pretty good staff. I think Dennis Allen as a coordinator is fine. Darren Reese as a coordinator is fine, and it's all good. So if you've got strong opinions, let's hear them.
Yeah, yeah. As in the team that's run by Coco Bananas, like Mark Davis and Tom Brady, pulling strings.
Cuckoo Bananas is how Brady and Davis and the Johnson are running things. Cocoa Bananas is dancing at the Gentlemen's Club down the street right now. Right now,
You know where
on
my
Tuesday
thoughts
at
are on cold
12:53.
days like this, where I'd rather be, right?
Yeah, yes.
Seriously,
Hopefully not outside.
yeah, right. But seriously, I love the Bears hitting a home run, taking a big swing, and bringing in Ben Johnson here. For me, it's mission accomplished for Ryan Poles in Chicago because they now have an adult as the conductor in the room of this symphony that I think you could see a Commanders type turnaround in
Mhm.
Chicago next year. Now again, I was really high on the Commanders going into this year. Turned out to be very right about that as they're now a win away from the Super Bowl. I was also kind of high on Caleb Williams and the Bears, and I wasn't so right about
Yeah,
that
yeah.
situation going into this year. But Ben Johnson helped Jared Goff become the second leading passer in the NFL this season behind only Joe Burrow. Just imagine what he's capable of doing with someone with Caleb Williams's traits and skill set
Great.
when you have an offense with DJ Moore, Rome Odunze, Keenan Allen, a versatile running back in DeAndre Swift who can be that playmaker as a receiver out of the backfield. It really feels like, if nothing else, this hire sets the table for the Bears to continue building with a philosophy in mind around a quarterback towards being competitive in the division again and maybe contending for more than that next year.
And that's it. They have the quarterback. They have playmakers scattered around who look like some of them, like Keenan Allen, might be on the downside. Some of them are very, very useful. Feel like the offensive line is fixable. That's a fixable problem, especially because you can probably start in the draft and grab a first round offensive lineman and do that. So these are all positive things. They have good things in the defense. And I don't have any other takeaway from it except, as an organization, you put Ryan Poles and Warren and some of these other guys in the room and you talk actual football and not the crazy stuff, you get the guy. Because again, Johnson talked to Davis and Brady and whoever else is in that room over there. I think it's Brady, and Davis. And he turned down the Jets. So if you want that best guy, you have to show, obviously you're a bad team. Obviously you didn't win, but are you conducting business like a professional? Bears seem to be doing that.
And I think it's very interesting that you had the report from Albert Breer come out on Monday that this was the job dating back to 2023 that Ben Johnson wanted, but it wasn't available. It didn't come open. And now it is. So he's clearly seen something in Chicago, perhaps in the power structure that you're pointing out with Ryan Poles and Warren and what they're building there. This has drawn him to that job. I think that having Caleb Williams checks a major box that you have a lot of uncertainty about with the Raiders, on top of working in a who knows type of situation, what that's going to develop into. You have a known commodity here with the power structure and the quarterback in place. I love the hire, and I'm going to be fascinated to see what the offense starts looking like with this quarterback.
Definitely a lot of things to be encouraged about. And on the other side of the ball, there is a hostage situation going on about 90 miles north on the turnpike right now. Apparently, Aaron Glenn is locked in the Jets facility, and they're not going to let him leave until he signs a deal. Although the way, and this is happening in real time right now. By the time this comes out, we may have resolution on this. But the way Rap Sheet is describing it, it sounds like Aaron Glenn is interviewing the New York Jets to see if they are worthy of him being their head coach right now.
Where else would you go if you're Aaron Glenn? Are you going to go
Saints.
hitch the wagon to Dallas? Are you going to go
Saints.
to Vegas?
Saints. He coached for 4 years under Sean Payton. He'll go down there. They like him there. To say that the whole thing with the Saints, because we kind of even forget they exist and that they have a coaching search. Loomis is kind of running everything there. And Loomis would love just sort of like, here's a defensive head coach who doesn't want to be a showrunner or anything else like that. I can punch him in and he's like Dennis Allen 2.0. And I can do all my kooky stuff with the salary cap and extend Cameron Jordan's contract until 2056 or whatever. And I think, and Glenn knows that. So I think
Yeah.
Glenn knows that that's in his back pocket. What do the Johnsons know? Who knows? But I think they realize it right now with him in the building. If they whiff on this, if the Jets, if you are listening to this and the Jets have already whiffed on this and you are probably laughing, it's hysterical for non-Jet fans, but it's a nightmare for that organization.
No, it really is. And in a lot of ways, it will be the prodigal son coming home, right? Because he played there, had a
Yeah,
stellar playing career there as a defensive back.
yeah,
But here's the thing. The Jets are clearly, by even interviewing and prioritizing Aaron Glenn, they're prioritizing winning with that defense, right? But Mike, the biggest problem with that Jets defense, it wasn't the scheme under Robert Saleh. Scheme wise, they were fine. It wasn't the individual talent at the skill positions. They have Sauce Gardner. They have some dynamic playmakers up front. Will McDonald, the fourth, is just a game wrecker at linebacker. I like the defensive line, some of the pieces they have there. But as a high ranking official in that building told me multiple times, they built that defense to protect leads. That's what it was built to do.
right.
How many leads the Jets had over the last 2 years? 3, 4, maybe?
Yeah, 4 leads in 2 years. That's about right. They're not doing this to prioritize the defense. They're doing this to make a decision quickly. That's a solid decision. They're looking for a win. They're looking for an offseason win right now. You can bring in Aaron Glenn. Yeah, he you're familiar with him. He was a defensive player here. He's a no nonsense guy. We didn't wipe our butts with the Rooney Rule. All of those things.
Look what he
Now we
did with
have
the
our
Lions.
right. See, yeah, exactly. Now we have our adult, and we can move forward from there. So I don't look at this team and say, well, they got to get an offensive guru. Maybe that'd be nice or whatever. They've got to behave professionally, and this is an indication. Bring this guy in. He will behave professionally. He can speak the language of guys like Gardner and DJ Reed, maybe keep them calm. And then they still have the big problem. The general manager situation is not clear yet.
No resolution there, and there might be some internal candidates who are going to surprise you rising to the forefront if this thing continues to drag on from people that I've talked to over there. But you talk about bringing Glenn in. I like the hire. It's the adult in the room that you spoke of. I think that the recent track record with the Lions should elevate him both for the Jets job, the Saints job, the Cowboys job, the Raiders. He should be in the mix for any of these openings. Let's be real about that. But from a Jets perspective, when you've spent your life throwing your way out of trouble because you've fallen behind early, they don't just need a new head coach, Mike. They need a quarterback.
Yes.
And who's the quarterback? You're picking seventh, so you're not going to get Cam Ward. You're not going to get Shedeur Sanders.
Yep.
You're not. You're certainly not bringing Sam Darnold back. That's the nightmare scenario. Literally, with the ghosts swirling through MetLife Stadium. Say it with me. They need a quarterback. Whoever head coach is, they need a quarterback who can light up the scoreboard and let the defense pin back their ears. No Aaron Glenn hire or any other defensive-minded head coach is going to fix what's wrong with that defense.
Right. But also no offensive coach would create a quarterback. They could help nurture one. But again, there's nobody in the draft that can say, oh, if you pair this person with Liam Cohn or Doug Peterson or somebody, you're going to be fine. But like what they need is, in addition to the quarterback, is the clarity on the Aaron Rodgers situation. And that's probably being talked about in Florham Park right now as we speak here on Tuesday afternoon, where Glenn is saying, am I the one who has to put the bell on the cat? Do I have to come up there in my opening press conference and say, well, I'm going to have some positive conversations with Rodgers about his future? Are we really doing it this way? And if so, what support do I have from you? What do you guys want? Because it's something a general manager should have made a decision on, an owner should have made a decision on, but they're going to waffle on this. And again, listeners, you may know this may have cost them this situation by the time you hear this.
For sure. And if you're the Detroit Lions, if you're a Lions fan, you have to be kind of gutted by this. And I'm not going to go so far as to buy into any sort of conspiracy theory that Glenn Johnson interviewing somehow pulled their attention away from game planning for the Commanders. And that's why they lost. Lose me with that. Okay. They didn't lose the game. They didn't throw 4 interceptions, the 3 by Jared Goff and 1 by Jamison Williams, because Ben Johnson spent a Tuesday afternoon over Zoom, like we're hosting this podcast, interviewing with the Bears. That's not why they lost, right?
I love when fans every year, every time this happens, oh, that's this. It's like fans live in this weird bubble where they don't think that the coaches are human beings. They're like, hey, you know what the coach also did? He had lunch. He spent an hour not game planning for that, so he could eat like a turkey wrap. And like, coach and fans don't think this. Fans are like we were when we were in kindergarten, where we thought the teacher, when we left, like slept in the classroom. And if we saw them in the grocery store, like, oh my God, the teacher exists outside of the classroom. I thought this was like a vampire, like living in their little lair. The coaches do other stuff, and sometimes, yes, they take a 2-hour Zoom meeting or like a quick flight someplace to deal with other things, it does not yeah, it did not make Jared
It's not
Goff.
like I said on Blue Sky the other day, right? Where like they're in meetings and all of a sudden Aaron Glenn raises his hand and says, "Hey Dan, I gotta head out. I gotta bolt out of this meeting. I got to
I
interview
got a
for the
thing.
job."
I got a thing. I gotta go interview for another job. Right, right, right.
Walk out of the team meeting room into his office, shut the door, and pop open the laptop to do a Zoom job interview. That did not happen.
And it's like in the middle, like Ben Johnson's in the middle of a sentence. Okay, Jameson Williams on this trick play. What you're going to do is you're going to throw the ball downfield to, oh crap, I got to go, and runs out, and that's why, and that's why it went, and that's the rest of the story, folks. Yeah, no, 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 no.
That's not why they lost, right? But if you're the Lions, there is a little bit of an element of where do you go from here?
Right.
And one of the things that I think has garnered Dan Campbell a lot of acclaim and a lot of praise, and I think is a big reason why they turned that situation around as quickly as they did, is they hired a staff of former players and relatively inexperienced coaches with Aaron Glenn. You look at Ben Johnson himself, JT Barrett, recently retired quarterback, Mark Brunell,
Antoine Randall L.
Antoine Randall, Hank Fraley, former
Yes.
Eagles center offensive line coach, Sean Hamilton, Calvin Shepard. These are all relatively inexperienced. Terrell Williams has been along for a long time. He might be your defensive coordinator in waiting,
Right.
very experienced defensive line coach and run game coordinator on that side of the ball. But there aren't a lot of great in-house candidates to promote to continue the continuity of what they've built over the last couple of years on both sides of the ball here.
And Fraley is interviewing at the Seahawks. He will be, obviously, as the offensive line coach for that offensive line, will be in demand. I think he's somebody the New England Patriots should be calling.
Right.
It's like, oh, here's somebody who can fix your line and give you some of this Ben Johnson flavored and Andy Reid flavored. Remember where he Fraley started his career, offense, and get you out of that whole everything is the Patriots mindset. He could leave. So yeah, they might have to go outside of the organization a little bit to bring in some veteran experienced coaches. And if they don't, and even if they do, the brain drain is real. Like, we're based in Philadelphia. We saw the post Doug Peterson brain drain. We saw the post Sirianni last year brain drain where they did have to come out and bring fresh guys in. This is a dilemma that Dan Campbell's going to face in the days and weeks to come.
Right. I mean, you could talk about Terrell Williams as a potential defensive coordinator. You can talk about Cameron Davis, maybe, but I think this is his first stop as an assistant coach. Hank Fraley, if you can retain him and promote him to offensive coordinator, to me, that's a coup d'etat for Campbell and the Lions for all the reasons you talked about. The versatility in terms of coaching the offensive line, the experience in several very successful high-powered offenses through his career, part of the Andy Reid coaching tree in a sense.
In a sense,
I mean,
yeah.
that's the move.
Yeah, the problem there is, well, first of all, I think the coordinator in waiting is the passing game coordinator, Tanner Pender. I'm drawing a blank right now. I don't know if you have the names in front of me. They have a passing game coordinator who I think they plan to promote. They also have Scotty Montgomery as assistant head coach. And that means that Hank Fraley can't get the assistant head coach title,
Right.
which would then bar him from going elsewhere. And also, one thing that could happen is Hank Fraley could wind up being Ben Johnson's coordinator.
Yeah.
Because that's another thing that happens. Johnson's going to be looking at Randall L., Brunell, maybe some of these other guys, possibly taking one or two with him. Glenn might take one or two with him. It's a very difficult situation when you lose both coordinators. It's one reason why, Super Bowl runners-up often don't repeat because they lose those guys, whereas the Super Bowl champions, it's Andy Reid and Spagnuolo, and they're not going anywhere, and then whoever Andy's coordinator is goes, and it's like, well, that was just a guy.
Right. And it's one of those double-edged swords because it's the sign of a very healthy program when your assistant coaches get hired elsewhere because you're the model that franchises want to emulate. But then you're left kind of scrambling and figuring out after all of these head coaching staffs and coaching staffs are being filled and hired around the league, where you go from here. Scotty Montgomery is a great pick here too, because you look at what they've done with the running backs, what they've developed Jahmyr Gibbs into. He's obviously been in all of the meetings with Ben Johnson the last couple of years, and he's a bright mind in his own right. That might be the move.
Right. But again, as assistant head coach, they can keep him. So they can make him offensive coordinator. They can leave him in that position. That's one piece. Johnson's got a bunch of other pieces. I mean, Campbell has a bunch of other pieces that he's going to have to sort through.
And while the Lions have become a model franchise that other teams are trying to emulate and the Bears are trying to build in their fashion, the Dallas Cowboys, let's just say that they have not. They've kind of been on the flip side of that ledger in terms of how they're viewed around the league, and for pretty good reason, especially with the way that Jerry Jones has completely, bungled this coaching search and this entire hiring process. In the column on Monday morning, I did a by the numbers in terms of the conference championship games, Mike.
Okay.
It has been 10,000, and now as of today, 601 days since the Dallas Cowboys last appeared in an NFC championship game on January 14th, 1996. And the number of combined NFC championship game appearances by NFC East rivals since that time is 11. So the Cowboys, not exactly America's team, not exactly the model franchise, and dare I say, no longer the destination that they might have once been as they look to hire a head coach after bungling the firing, dismissal, non-renewal of Mike McCarthy's contract and watching some top candidates wind up elsewhere without even being on the field to play the game.
And what's interesting, those 11 appearances, since the Commanders organization, it's the first one since 93, I think. So I think you're looking at like 6 by the Eagles and 4 by the Giants and 1 by the Commanders, some number like that. And the Cowboys are the ones left out. That's what's shocking.
Yes.
If you're following this, I'm sure you've been following this and trying to keep up with it. On Monday, the announcement was that Vegas, the odds makers say that Brian Schottenheimer is now the leading candidate. And there's a flurry of confusion. I follow some pretty well-connected Cowboys beats. I know a couple of them. And they're like, this seems to have come from the radio guys, albeit the well-connected radio guys, the guys who like Jerry Jones argues with them Tuesday mornings or whatever. So we haven't gotten anything legitimate. And then even Adam Schefter was like, you know what? Sometimes this is Vegas being Vegas and like just getting some schmuck bait in. This morning, Calvin Watkins, who I believe is as connected as anybody in the Cowboys world, announced
As
that
anybody on any beat, by the way. I mean, Calvin Watkins, he rules that beat, and he's as plugged in with that team as any beat reporter is with any team around the league. He's great at what he does.
he absolutely is great. And he announced that, yes, they are interviewing Brian Schottenheimer, which now remember, they have to interview him. He's not in-house anymore because he's not under contract. And so, like, they let all the coaches go. And the good one, the special teams coordinator, John Fossil, signs up right away with the Titans, the special teams coordinator. So he's gone. Everyone else is just kind of hanging around. I know McCarthy interviewed with like the Raiders, but like now they're going to go, let's go interview the guys that we could have just extended the contract on or whatever. I guess if you're going to bring back Schottenheimer, why don't you just call McCarthy again? What what does Schottenheimer offer except like the Dwight Schrute to McCarthy's Michael Scott? What else would he possibly be?
I guess you're hoping that you're avoiding the fiasco of Mike McCarthy embarrassing you at the podium and at the introductory press conference when he said that he didn't really mean it when he said that he studied every team around the league before taking that job, right? Like you're trying to avoid that PR disaster. But yeah, like if the players love playing for Mike McCarthy as much as they say, and you seem to believe, why'd you let him walk?
Right? Why bring and then why bring in his assistant? Like again, like you let him walk. It's like, well, it's time for a change, and this had run its course. You don't bring the other guy in.
No.
So this could be a keep busy type of situation. It could be a courtesy. Of course, they're circling Kellen Moore,
yes,
to a degree, but like this is not professional behavior by an NFL
was it
team.
Professional behavior by Jerry Jones to turn down the Bears interview request for Mike McCarthy? And if they hire him, perhaps you get some sort of compensation, but then you just let him walk when his contract expires. Is that professional? Like, I just can't follow or figure out what they're doing there. And it does feel written in the stars, doesn't it, that it's Kellen Moore, that this is biding your time, running down the clock until you can have that interview. If the Eagles win this week during the bye week between the championship game and the Super Bowl, but if the Eagles lose, you can hire him Monday morning at 9:30 if you so desire. Like, it just feels like this is all trending towards Kellen Moore going back home to Dallas.
Yes, and again, it's another guy going back home. Yes, the podcast cat has appeared. Tigger has opinions right now about this, but and actually, I need to drop my train of thought. thought as well. So, it goes back to this. You're talking about an 82-year-old owner slash general manager slash autocrat, an 82-year-old running operations, not somebody like a John Mara who's older, but like has a layer of infrastructure below him, or the McCaskies who have layers of infrastructure below him. An 82-year-old running the show like as an autocrat with his son riding shotgun, the way 82-year-olds unfortunately often run shows.
Yeah, and I just don't know how this plays out for the Cowboys. And you're starting to get further and further into the calendar here, right? If
Yes.
it's not Kellen Moore, and you're not waiting on one of these coordinators, you've lost out on Ben Johnson. Not that I think that Johnson would have ever taken that job.
Yeah.
Aaron Glenn's probably not walking through that door either.
Right.
Mike Vrabel, the moment that they fired Jared Mayo 20 seconds after his post-game
Yes.
press conference in week 18, Mike Vrabel was essentially the head coach there before the Cowboys had a chance to even talk to him. It might come down to just having to settle for Brian Schottenheimer. It might just be like, oh, we messed up, guys. Hey, we shouldn't have let Mike McCarthy go. But hey, you guys know Schottenheimer. You know him. You know Brian. You liked Mike. You got Mike, but here's Brian. Go play hard for him.
Yeah, here it is. I mean, yeah, Kellen Moore could say no. I wouldn't see him saying no, et cetera. And it's a complete lack of process. It's just a lack of. They've interviewed Moore. They did interview Moore. They interviewed Leslie Frazier, who's like a blast from the past. They interviewed Robert Saleh, which I can't tell if he's making the Rooney Rule rounds or is he a serious candidate. But that's about it. You have teams. I mean, the Raiders introduced the Bears interviewed like a dozen guys,
Yeah.
13, 14 guys total.
They're about to interview Eddie George. That's how low on the list they had gotten. How many guys they had, into
Yes.
Hallett's Hall.
Exactly. And you're at like 3 interviews. You let the first 2 buses pass, and you're just circling people who, again, are in your Rolodex. That's not how to do this. That's not how to do this.
That's how you go since 1996.
11,000
days without making an NFC Championship game appearance, and why teams like the Bills and Chiefs and the Eagles and Commanders are going to be dueling it out for 2 spots in the Super Bowl, and the Cowboys haven't tasted that type of success in 1996.
Right. You need a professional operation, and these are 4 professional operations. One of them very new, one new to professionalism, but otherwise 3 very experienced professional organizations.
Yeah, one of them got rid of their autocrat, and all of a sudden they're one of the most dominant teams in the league.
Right. Hey, here's a hands-off owner who hired a football guy, who hired a couple other football guys, and here they are. Here they are, folks.
And they have a quarterback. So how about that? So
let's start with the quarterback. Yes.
Let's start with the NFC Championship game. And you posed a fascinating question on the outline that I'm going to give you the first crack at answering. Suppose you're the Eagles and Jalen Hurts is only 90% going into this game, right? You have something you need to do. But if you're the Commanders and you know that going in, if you know that you're not getting Jalen Hurts at his best or at his most healthy, if you're Washington, what do you do here?
First of all, you hope you match up in your secondary, okay, which the matchups still don't look great. Mike Sandstrill had 2 interceptions. He has not had a very good season. He's a rookie who's starting to come around. Marshawn Lattimore had 15 pass interference penalties and a couple of stops against the Eagles. He had a hard time against Mike Evans. He's not your ideal matchup, but he's better than your other opportunities. You hope you can come up with matchups that make sense on the back end. You want to run a lot of man coverage because that's what Quinn prefers to run this year. And they don't generate a lot of pass rush. But here's the other thing. We really noticed it against the Lions, and I think we noticed it against the Commanders weeks back, against the Eagles. I looked up the most up-tempo offenses in the last 10 years, because that's all I have really good data for. I could probably have gone back through Aaron's stuff and gotten more, but the teams that run no huddle the most since 2015, and the Commanders are pretty much neck and neck with the 2015 Eagles. You remember who coached the 2015 Eagles?
Yeah, that would be Chip High-Speed Kelly.
That would be Chip High-Speed Kelly. In fact, the 2016 49ers were like 3rd on that list. And unfortunately, I don't have the 2014, 2013 Eagles without hunting them. They might have topped this year's Commanders, but the Commanders are the fastest offense in a decade.
Wow.
And yes, it's kind of like just been happening all year. It's like, oh, they're running no huddle. They're running no huddle at Chip Kelly level. And that's very passé in the NFL right now. People will shift into no huddle and back. Nobody's running it 60% of the time and anything like that since Kelly left the league. And now Kingsbury's doing it. Kingsbury didn't even do that in Arizona.
Amazing how that's kind of flown under the radar, but you give me those numbers now, and it all starts to make sense why they're so aggressive on fourth down.
Right.
Because if you're running tempo and you're wearing down and grinding down defenses that don't have the opportunity to substitute because you're not substituting and you're not taking a break to huddle, and you're getting yourself into 4th and 2, 4th and 4, 4th and 1 situations, you're going tempo. Why wouldn't you be hyper aggressive going for it? And why wouldn't you play the odds? So that's fascinating to realize that that's kind of baked into who they are and why they're so successful right now.
Right. I'm assuming there's people on YouTube who talk about this constantly. It just hasn't floated back to me. And I would see them during the season. It's like, oh, hurry up. They're running hurry up. They're running hurry up. They were running it all the time. And you're right. It was very effective in their running game, obviously effective in the passing game, and it's super effective in their short yardage game. The next best thing to a tush push in the world is kind of like the sneak with tempo.
Yeah.
If you come to the line, hike, bang, you go. It's like you're not going to stop a half yard. I know Daniels doesn't run many conventional sneaks, but you can run inside with Robinson quickly. You can run sort of a little option type sneak from the pistol. All kind of things that the Commanders have been able to do. So the Eagles have to solve that, and the Commanders have to commit to it. If you remember, one of the touchdowns that the Commanders scored, excuse me, against the Eagles, Darius Slay was like running off the field. Somebody else was running on. Because it was up-tempo, communications lap. I think Zacchaeus caught the touchdown pass. That's the kind of thing that the Commanders want to force a couple big plays like that. And now the Eagles have to play from behind or play catch-up and not just play Saquon ball.
And if you're the Eagles and if you're Nick Sirianni and Kellen Moore, knowing that Jalen Hurts might not be 100%, the one thing I would do, Mike, I'm practicing this week with Saquon Barkley in the tush push situation because you look at what the Ravens did a couple of times down the stretch and what some other teams, I believe a couple other teams have done this as well. You put the tight end quarterback. I don't know that there's 4 players in the NFL with more lower body strength than Saquon. If you can get him to handle a snap comfortably, if you can get him in that situation, why subject Jalen Hurts to that extra punishment on the tush push when you could get Saquon Barkley probably just as, if not more successful with that play than what Jalen Hurts has been able to be?
But you're right. It's about comfort with the snap. I would be talking on Discords with people. I'm like, well, why don't they do this? If they haven't practiced the snap, or they practiced it a few times and this guy didn't like it, but more likely it's a matter of not practicing it that. And then if you tried it in the snow like last week, it could be the number one disaster, which is the fumble. So maybe they're practicing that this week. Maybe they're practicing Tanner McKee with it. I don't know. But you want that in the arsenal because, again, that almost became an issue. It did become an issue. The Eagles had to settle for a field goal in a situation where they would have pushed into the end zone and possibly erased the fourth quarter drama if Hurts was 100% healthy.
Right. And if I'm Washington, I'm popping in the tape from last week, and I'm running the same defense that the Rams did, because I think that the Commanders front seven is better and certainly more experienced than the Rams front seven. And what did they do? They pressured Jalen Hurts all afternoon. But according to Pro Football Reference, Mike, they didn't blitz once. They didn't blitz at all in that game. It was all front four pressure. It was all Jared Verse. You know, if I'm them, I'm taking my chances with my secondary matching up with A.J. Brown, Devonta Smith, Dallas Goedert, and Jahan Dotson. If the quarterback isn't 100%, who, right? The invisible man. Jahan.
Every time someone says Jahan Dotson socially, like in line at the grocery store, I give them a big who. Yes, it's people love me at parties.
Oh, you have to be tons of fun. You are tons of fun. I've partied with you at Super Bowls. Come on, give yourself more credit than that.
Oh, gosh.
But if I'm the Commanders, I'm taking my chances with my secondary against their receivers with a banged up Hurts. If I can get home with the front four pressure. And I heard this on Adam Schefter's podcast shortly before we came on the air. Herm Edwards said that the one thing, if you're Washington, get that game close in the fourth quarter.
Yes.
If that game is close, and Herm Edwards coached Jaden Daniels during his time at Arizona State, you're going to win that game. More than likely, you're winning that game with Jaden Daniels. He has 5 fourth quarter comebacks so far this year, including the fourth quarter comeback against the Buccaneers in the playoffs. So to me, Mike, if I'm Washington, it's how can I relentlessly pressure Jalen Hurts And how do I get this to be a one-score game going into the fourth quarter?
The fourth quarter chess match, because the Eagles want to melt the clock. They always want to melt the clock. The Eagles almost melted the clock in week 16, and Devontae Smith dropped a pass deep in Commander's territory that like let the clock stop and like left time on the clock, and the Eagles settled for a field goal, and that's what set up the touchdown. So that's going to be a chess match if this is a close game. If the Eagles are nursing some 3-point lead, what can we do to run the clock? And last against the Rams, it's like, well, we're going to run Saquon, but we tried one other play, the bootleg, and Hurts takes another sack during it. Come up with a strategy for running the clock that isn't just 100%. We're going to try to murder you with Saquon, because they'll be ready for that, and you need some kind of counterpunch, whatever it might be.
For sure. And I've talked to people all week about this, whether it's my wife, whether it's my father, people you see at the bus stop, or
Yes.
my daughter in the morning, the other dads were like the dad crew. This is the matchup in these playoffs that I think if you're the Eagles, you feel the least good about, right? Because there's the familiarity.
This is the one you feel I mean, if you're like a panicky Eagles fan, you're scared of the Commanders because they're the Commanders. You want to face the Lions? Did you want to face the Vikings when they were looking good 3 weeks ago?
I'm talking about the teams that they played so far, whether it's the Packers or the Rams or the Commanders. Okay. I don't know if you're the Eagles. I don't know that you should have feared Minnesota and Sam Darnold. I don't know that would have been all that worrisome of a matchup. I felt a lot better about the Eagles' chances against the Rams than I did against Green Bay and that defense, with Jordan Love maybe rising to the occasion. But if you're the Eagles and you're looking at a team that just not a care in the world, right? They're happy to be here. They're playing with house money. Defensively, they're stacking up opportunistic moments on top of fundamentals that just get better every week. A young quarterback who might already be the best quarterback in the NFC, young talent. It just feels like if you're the Eagles, you just better take them seriously going into this game, because I think the Commanders have the talent and they have the quarterback to take this thing one more step.
Yeah, I mean, they have the talent. They have everything there. They allowed like 8 yards per carry against the Lions.
Yeah.
That defense is not good. So it's like when we talk about these other teams, their defenses were good to okay, or in the Lions' case, was good, but then injuries took them down to okay. This is a below average, barely playoff caliber defense, and that should be the difference that the Eagles, with a healthy enough Hurts, should be able to exploit.
For sure. And flipping the script over to the AFC and the AFC Championship game, I'm really excited about this. Bills and Chiefs. How can you not be?
Right.
Patrick Mahomes against Josh Allen. I wrote a lengthy feature last week speaking with Thurman Thomas and Lorenzo Alexander and some people around the league about the Bills' transformation into this physical, beat you up running team, rather than letting Josh Allen just beat you and bash your brains out in terms of the deep passing game and all those things. And you saw that formula play out against the Ravens. Now you're going into Arrowhead with the mentality and the temperament of a team that's capable of pulling off the upset.
Yes.
The problem is it's Andy Reid, it's Patrick Mahomes, and it's the postseason Chiefs on the other side.
Yeah.
How's it play out? Is it the physicality ruling the day? Or is the ghosts of the Chiefs' losses past and this elite head coach quarterback duo that do it again?
And it's Chris Jones, and it's George Karlaftis, who is starting to take another step, and it's Nick Bolton and these guys at linebacker. So if you try to go into pure 4 on the floor, ground and pound mode, you might face resistance. And the Bills did face resistance early in that game. They were running the ball very hard. Third quarter, they were not running the ball particularly well, and that's when the Ravens came back. So I think they can't rely on those tactics exclusively. What they need is their defensive front to come through, get the sacks, get the pressure, maybe get some turnovers. And that's why, for me, I think the key to this game is it's going to be Rousseau. It's going to be Epinesa. It's going to be Von Miller. It's going to be Oliver. And it's also going to be the health on the back end. And the one thing I did not check before airtime, because I'm planning to check when a day or two has passed, health of Teron Johnson, the health of Taylor Rapp in the secondary. That is kind of like your top safety and your top nickel guy against a team that wants to throw the ball over the middle of the field to their tight ends.
Yeah, no doubt about it. You just took the biggest key right out of my mouth here. And I think the biggest key player at this moment, knowing what we know, it might be Damar Hamlin, who's had a terrific year and Pro Bowl player, potential all-pro safety, just a dominant season from Hamlin. I'm not sure who's going to have the unenviable task of covering Travis Kelce or knowing where Travis Kelce is going to be. But you watch that game on Saturday, Travis Kelce feasted in the soft spot of the
Yes.
Texans zone defense. That can't happen. I mean, even with his diminished speed, 7 catches, 117 yards, and a touchdown, he was the MVP for the Chiefs last week. If you're the Bills, it doesn't matter whatever the Chiefs do otherwise. You have to take Travis Kelce out of this game because, much like Saquon Barkley is the engine that makes the Eagles' offense go, Travis Kelce is their spark.
It is their spark, and you're looking at a team that otherwise tries to do both of them. Both teams offensively, it's kind of very dink and dunk and spread the ball around now.
Yeah.
It looks different, but when you look at it in the stat sheet, it's the same. It's like, okay, we're trying to get a quick pass to this guy. We're trying to get the tight ends open. We've got sort of our end around guy that we use, like Xavier Worthy on one side. No, they'll use Samuel for that on the other side. So you want to take those things away. The trick with the Chiefs in the Chiefs in the playoffs is they can change personalities like in the middle of the first quarter.
Right.
They can come out, and I've seen this in these games where we're going to come out and we're going to establish, the screen game. It fails. They abandon that and go into these other directions. What you want to do again with the Bills against the Chiefs is the Chiefs still have not solved the problems at their tackle positions in any way. You should be able to get pressure. You have to leverage that pressure into success, into stops, preferably into turnovers, because then you can tilt the game in your favor.
No doubt about it. And I think for the Chiefs, they need that secondary option in the passing game. It hasn't emerged for them in the postseason. They haven't played a meaningful game before the divisional game against the Texans since Christmas Day. And both of those games were the Travis Kelce experience on steroids, right? To me, their key player is DeAndre Hopkins. This is the game that you brought him to help you win against Buffalo, trip to the Super Bowl on the line. They need a guy who can move the chains. They need a guy who, when the Bills are dedicating a safety to shadowing or traveling with Travis Kelce, who you can find the soft spot or you can be the big play catalyst vertically down the field. They've had Xavier Worthy kind of mold into that over the last couple of weeks, and he's taken some big steps in his development. DeAndre Hopkins didn't have a catch against the Texans, and I know he's a little bit banged up, but if he's healthy and he's on the field, I think he's a guy to watch who could have a breakout.
Part of it, Hopkins clearly was the go waste Derek Stingley, go waste him.
Yeah.
Like we're run to the corner with him, get him out of there. So, and he has slowed down a little bit along the way. It could be that. It could be Hollywood Brown working crossing routes again against a team that might be depleted in the middle of the field. Oh, we're going to focus on stopping Kelce. You run a crossing route, a drag underneath Kelce with a fast guy. There's ways you can do these things. Andy might want to consider the running game, which I know is something that we've been saying as Philadelphia natives since 2003, but Andy might want to consider the running game a little bit. Kareem Hunt late in the game against the Texans turned things on a little bit. Pacheco has not been a factor lately, but like I've seen the Chiefs. We've seen so many Chiefs playoff games in the last 4 years. We've seen everything. We've seen them go to the bench, pull a different running back out there, and have them have success in the playoffs. Those are the things they'll have to do. I think we're in the same place where if you really look at it pound for pound on paper, the Bills are the better team. But you're facing this wall of Hall of Famers with rings who have these ways of getting things done, and they're at home. And you can't just say those are intangibles or be like, oh, analytics says you can't ignore those things.
You can't ignore those things. And I had a great back and forth with Aaron Schatz on Blue Sky today before we recorded this. He had an overlay of the Chiefs DVOA this season, and it was steady Eddie, middle of the pack. They are what they are the whole year. And you saw the big drop off when they played the practice squad in week 18.
Yeah.
So I replied to him, I'd love to know the difference between the regular season historically and the postseason for the Chiefs, because maybe you pick up on this, but it just seems like the eye test with the Chiefs is they have this other gear that they shift into in the postseason that no other team can match, whether it's in Arrowhead, whether it's in Buffalo, whether it's in Glendale or Miami in the Super Bowl. There's this next gear that they shift into. And the DVOA, at least offensively, it's a 7-point improvement from 27 to 20, from 20 to 2027 in DVOA offensively from the regular season to the playoffs. So there's a jump there. And that's where I agree with you. I think the Bills are the better team. I think that Josh Allen is playing transcendent football right now. I love the transformation to this physical running game. I think the defense has done really well this year for them. But there's just something about the Chiefs in January, then the numbers are now backing that up. It's a tough place to go and win.
Yeah, and for the record, I'm not even going to think about making any predictions until I see some injury reports and weather reports because it's too close to call. Even if you take the intangibles out and just say, well, it's a home team,
Yeah.
it's too close to call. Because while you said it's steady Eddie for the Chiefs, it's certainly not bad.
No.
And while the Bills have higher highs, they have a couple of lower lows in their portfolio as well.
No doubt about it. So I'm looking forward to it. There should be some great games. And one other game to look forward to that
Yes.
you and I are going to be in attendance for at least the week leading up to
Yes.
Between the Hash Marks podcast is headed to Mobile, Alabama for the Senior Bowl. We will be on the ground in Mobile. I can't wait for the Saucy Q barbecue lunch that's become a tradition for you and I. I can't wait for the practices. Veets, the dive bar Veets, I could give or take, but I can't wait to be there.
I'll get you to the better places
Ooh.
where there's more VIPs now.
Ooh.
Yeah, I'm not going to say it on the air because I forget the name.
Don't do that.
I forget the name of the joint. I know where it is. I can walk there in my sleep. We'll get there. Saucy Q is going to be tricky because of the schedule, but I will find a way to get us to Saucy Q. But I'm looking forward to the sights, the sounds, the smells. I've been keeping up on my getting caught up on my rookies, figuring out who's who of some of this rookie class. There's a great crop of defenders there.
Yeah.
Defensive edges, edge rushers, and defensive tackles as well. Really good crop of wide receivers. Quarterbacks. There are quarterbacks there. There are human beings who.
I'm excited for Milrow. I'm excited to see
a good one. Milrow's a good one. Yeah, we'll look at him because he has a little bit of a sub Jalen Hurts thing about him.
Yeah, I was the last time I was in Mobile was 2 years ago, and I openly joked with people that if I were a wide receiver or a running back in that All-Star game, I'd probably sue because the quarterback play was so suboptimal and subpar. But it's always a great experience watching practice. We get to watch the one-on-one individual drills, the 7-on-7s, full teams. You get to make some fun evaluations of these kids up close and personal. And I know you have some great content planned for it. I'm excited to get some interviews banked away. I'm excited for the practice diaries that we'll be putting out. It's going to be a lot of fun.
Right, and we're going to do our best to find a way to make sure we are broadcasting from down there, somewhere down there. It may be at Serta's, it might be at Saucy Q, might be at the stadium. We'll be doing something to give you guys an update there. But my main thing is there will be on the Two Deep Zone some kind of draft package.
Ooh.
Okay, well, it won't be on February 2nd or anything like that, but there will be a big draft package coming. And the Senior Bowl is a big part of that because if you're not down there, meeting some of these young individuals, talking to some of the people who are out there and watching them play on the practice field, it's hard to get good draft coverage. You just don't have the granular face-to-face that you need for it.
And if fans aren't all that familiar with how the sausage is made in the NFL, legal tampering does not begin until something like March 15th.
Yeah.
But hey, wink, wink, nod, nod, with all of the agents in town representing their incoming prospects in the Senior Bowl, and every executive, general manager, personnel director in Mobile, Alabama, wink, wink, nod, nod, in the same cigar bars that I'll be trolling, in the same high-end establishments that Mike is telling me that we're going to be frequenting late at night. These deals are being discussed and the framework is being jotted out on napkins. So hopefully I'll have some interesting nuggets and tidbits to report about free agency and things that could be coming in the coming weeks. So I'm excited about this trip. I'm looking forward to getting back.
Now I'm worried. I hope the cigar bar is still open. The one in the Admiral.
Yeah.
We'll check it out. We don't have to do this on air, but we'll make sure we have all our bases covered. And if that one's closed, there's a cigar bar somewhere in town, and some of those execs are going to be there because they like cigars.
Yes, they do. I have some fun stories, some fun memories from combines and Senior Bowls past. Mike, in addition to the Senior Bowl coverage coming up from both of us, what's coming up on the Two Deep Zone in the next couple of days?
I honestly forget, but let me see if I can put it together right now. Okay. I am doing coaching carousel stuff. Hopefully we'll get Aaron Glenn clarity and I can finish that and put it out for tomorrow. And the little preview about the Cliff Kingsbury up-tempo stats. I'm putting something together about some of the most important statistics coming in for the Final Four. And a big one is on the Commander side of things, how much up-tempo they run and how like historic and quietly historic that has been this year. What about you?
I'm excited to read it. Yeah, a couple of big things coming out tomorrow morning on Wednesday before you wake up. It'll be the one key for every team to advance out of championship weekend into the Super Bowl. I have a feature coming up later in the week on one of the biggest stars of these games, who's going to play a big role in his team advancing, and the mailbag on Friday, where people ask their questions and had some really interesting Eagles developments in last week's mailbag. You'll have to go and check out.
Awesome. Awesome. I did miss that one at the end of the week, so I have to go back and check that one out.
No doubt about it. So, of course, follow Mike Tanier on Blue Sky and Threads. Follow me on Blue Sky and Threads at Matt Lombardo NFL. Check us out on Apple Podcasts, Spotify. You can watch the YouTube channel at Matt Lombardo 975. But, Mike, I'm excited for these games this weekend and even more excited to break them down next week with you in Mobile.
Absolutely. Can't wait.